It saddens me, really, to give this answer, but I think we're going to be in this position for a good couple of years yet.
The people that the public blames are the politicians, generally speaking. So I think one of the problems that we've got is that we have a culture in which we look at problems which are a lot to do with our own behaviour, our own attitudes, and we blame politicians.
I mean, what's been demonstrated in the last couple of years is the abject failure of just relying on the market to sort everything out. And the undue reverence that has been paid to people in the City of London, in the other financial centres around the world, as if they had all the answers to society's problems. They were the driving force that would generate wealth and prosperity for the rest of us.
Politicians have encouraged a kind of consumerist politics where you can have whatever you want, and that's not how politics works.
We moved away from grassroots, the core of what the industry was, and that was banking. It lent money to people who it thought could pay back and receive interest. We diverged in areas that do not resemble banking at all.
When credit stops flowing, it's like an electricity power shortage that affects the entire economy. Nobody is immune or can isolate themselves from the impact of this. That's why we will only be able to fix everything else that's problematic in our economy when we fix the banking system.
I think the IMF does need to be reformed quite substantially, and poor countries in particular need to have a full voice in all the government's arrangements, right up to the board and so on. And yes, it should be that the people who lead the organisation are all also chosen for merit and not because of some, even if they're good people, some juggling as to which countries should run it.
Ordinary people do want to get their voices heard, and I think government has to change in order to make that happen.
There's a need for fundamental reform. This summit gives us the opportunity to drive forward those reforms, and I hope that we'll see real progress over the coming 12 months.
I think there's no question we should be looking at the future and looking at what's going to be in demand. There's no point, building windmills if windmills are not in demand for the future. We've got to decide what's going to be in demand for the future, and this is a great opportunity to start afresh.
If we in this country or any other country starts closing our and their markets to other people, the other people will react by closing their markets to us. That means less demand for our goods, fewer export opportunities, and that will cut straight into jobs and incomes here in this country.
Really got to focus on jobs. Jobs give confidence. Confidence gives rise to spending and people planning, and that reinflates the economy. And without that, we're going to be in serious trouble.
Now, I think one of the big questions for the G20 is this going to be another gathering of national leaders fighting their national corners and seeing whether they can horse trade some kind of solution? Or is this going to be a moment where national leaders have the courage to say, the world as a whole has to work, and even if it's not in our short-term national interests, we have to be part of a new commitment to interdependency across the world.
The difference is this global downturn is costing people their jobs here in Britain. Already we're at risk that it's going to start costing people their lives in developing countries.
And one of the key things, I think, for a group of industrialised nations is to say we need to make sure this recession doesn't disproportionately affect either the poorest in our country or the poorest around the world. And both of those voices are going to be very loudly heard at the London Summit.
That even though we're going through a difficult time, we're going to try and help you with jobs, we're going to help you keep a roof over your head with your homes, and we're going to try and help businesses, and that way we can keep people together.
And this recession, like all recessions, is hurting the poorest worst of all. So I think we need to be clear that when we take action to address it, we have got to prioritise those people who are suffering most.
We are making a real difference, and aid is making a real difference. That's why it's important that the promises that have been made by the G8 are kept, because aid is working, but it's going to be needed more, not less, because of this financial crisis.
I'm sad to say there's another really demand that will come on, and that's from climate change. It's going to hit poor countries very badly. So the summit has got to focus on what they've already promised, really looking forward to the future about what poor countries will need and making sure that's done in the context of climate change as well.
I do not want to invest in an internal combustion engine. It's had the hell invested out of it. The time now is to invest in alternative modes of transport. And that's really what we need to do. And once we've done that, I think we might find loads of other spin-offs which would help us in our everyday lives other than transport.
My sincere hope is that London will mark a step forwards in the trade negotiations, where countries that represent about 85% of global productivity reaffirm the importance of finding a way through the difficulties the trade round has faced.
So I think this is a point, maybe a very important turning point in history, where there are some new realities that are dawning on people.
And if at the same time we understood that the pursuit of ever greater wealth and affluence and consumerism did nothing to enhance our well-being, and that in fact the things that make us happy, good friendships, activities which we feel that we're, you know, that we get completely into, relaxing. You know, you don't need money for these things. You can do these things without damaging the planet.
If we're going to get the global engine going again, we can do that best if we can really help poor countries develop, because that's where the growth's going to be, that's where future markets are. Actually, sadly, if we don't, we can expect a lot of conflict and unrest in the future.
But the good news is we will come out of it at the other side, and the cycle will start again, and hopefully our children will see a bright future going forward.